Good morning and welcome to day 22 of the diary, the Geriatric1944 coronavirus diaries. Today, the media. We've just had figures released about the amount of deaths and so on for every week, and it's been revealed that about 3,500 people who had coronavirus. Can I point out that means they had it? It doesn't mean they died because of it. In the last week they've got, that comes up to about a couple of weeks ago, has gone up by 3,500 people. Now, that's a very tragic and awful death count for the people who died and for the families and loved ones of them. On the other hand, people die every week. At this time of year, I gather it's about 10,000 people a year die. So the increase, which is slightly larger than the 3,500, I think 6,000 more people died this week than the average week of this year, includes those coronavirus deaths. But there are certain things that one's got to do that the media are not telling us. Number one, those coronavirus deaths are a very small percentage of the general deaths, and it's meant to be the peak time at the moment with people dying. So why will they not tell us that people die every week, sadly? And they've always got to add the word sadly, because we all know it's sad, but what can you do about it? It is life. Death is life. But they don't, for instance, the media, they don't have loads of people on every week, as they should do, sobbing relatives of people who died of cancer or because people died from smoking too much, which to me is the stupidest thing I've ever seen in my life. Why do people smoke? But still, they know it's poison. They know it'll kill you. Why do it? Or for the various other reasons, that heart attacks, too much blood sugar, lots of bits and pieces, car accidents. They don't have sobbing relatives saying, "Oh, Julia was such a lovely lady. She was far too young to die just because she was driving at 95 miles an hour in a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit." You don't see all that on the media. The agenda is pretend this is a plague and not a trivial virus. Whereas if you look at the really bad weeks of flu, and the weeks where people were dying in the flu season, which is mainly January or February, and there were far many deaths because of seasonal flu than of this coronavirus. And you go, for heaven's sakes, media, tell us the truth. The other thing that drives me mad is the insanity of not saying, look, nobody's been tested. In the UK, we've only tested people who are rushed to hospital with very serious symptoms or NHS staff. We haven't tested the millions of people, I think, like myself, who may have had COVID-19 coronavirus and got through it in a few days and be perfectly fit and well and healthy. Well, the percentage of deaths to people who got the coronavirus, like in the flu season, the percentage of death from people who got flu, is a very important thing that should be mentioned, because it reveals to you that for most people, coronavirus is a very trivial virus. The answer then being, was the world right to fall for the media hype and shut down economies, societies and everything else, in my opinion, causing millions more deaths than the coronavirus would have caused? But anyway, I wanted to do a more general talk about media because, as you can see up here, I was in the media for a great deal of my life before everything rather crumbled in the year 2000, 20 long years ago now, and used to be all over the place. That was the Observer that did a couple of pages on me when I had a magazine out called Revolution, and various other publications have carried my waffles and rubbish and trivia for the many years of my early life. I had a great time in the media. Probably the best time was writing for The Sun. Now, I'm not a fan of the tabloids, but I've got to tell you, The Sun was a great paper to write for. They really had good sub-editors. They never changed a word of my weekly copy. I did a page every week for about 10 years. They never changed so much as a comma in it without phoning me up and saying, JK, is it all right if we put a comma in here? And by the way, they always improved it every week. They never wouldn't run anything I wrote. So I wrote some very controversial things that were hugely against the philosophy of the newspaper. And they always carried it with no complaints. And I was never given instructions not to do anything. I met Rupert Murdoch once in the Concord Lounge. We were getting on Concord. I said, "Hello, Mr. Murdoch, you don't know me, but I write a column for one of your papers." And he said, "Best fucking thing in the paper." I've always liked the man ever since then. Actually, I did then spend the flight on Concord in the seat next to him, chatting to him, and a thoroughly attractive, charming, intelligent man who is not at all like the spitting image caricature. He's much older now, of course, but I found him an absolute delight, very good company and fascinating to talk to. Anyway, that was my Sun career, which lasted for an awfully long time, but I wrote for loads of other papers as well, including the Mail, the Times, the Telegraph, the Guardian. I was just about in everything. And I remember during the Sun era when I was writing was the time when Kelvin Mackenzie, who was the editor there, who I thought was an actually great editor, although he could be a very difficult man, and he got into terrible stick during the Hillsborough thing for printing pages blaming the fans wrongly, as it happens. And I completely, even at the time, although I wasn't commenting on that at all because I knew nothing about it, I felt very bad for him because it was the police. The police deliberately lied to him. The police behave really badly in this country a great deal of the time, and they weren't blamed at the time, although since then they have been completely blamed. All the blame fell on Kelvin's shoulders. So if you're watching this in Liverpool, Scousers, please forgive me for supporting the man. But I did have a great time writing a column there, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And during the Elton John drama, when the Sun were doing all the stuff about Elton, I remember I went up there to deliver my copy. I normally just delivered it over the phone, but I'm afraid my rather like my strange hood that I'm wearing, my camera is hiccuping here. I went up to the offices. Kelvin sees me. It was a huge office up in Wapping. Sees me and said, "Can you see me, by the way?" And said, "Hey, Jonathan, come with me." Marched me to the huge safe in the office. Opened the safe. The entire Sun was absolutely fell silent. You could have heard a pin drop. And it was in the news department, but the whole Sun it was an open office, so everyone was there. Complete silence. Opened the safe, reached in and pulled out a large photograph and gave it to me. And the photograph was a photo of Elton John, who was a friend of mine, as he still is to this day. And we'd come to an agreement that the Sun, when the Elton thing was going on, I was not going to make any comment against Elton or his manager, because I knew them both very well, and it wouldn't be fair. And as I said, the paper was really fair to me at that point, didn't make me do anything I didn't want to do. And he handed me this photo, and the photo was of Elton, shall we say, pleasuring with lips a young lad. And Kelvin said to me, "There you go, Jonathan. There's your friend Elton. What do you think of your friend now?" And there was you could have heard a pin drop. And I said, "Lucky Elton." And the whole office erupted into laughter. Kelvin stuffed the photo back in his safe, snapped at me, "Bloody Jonathan King, you're the only person in the world who always gets one above me. Come and have a cup of tea in my office." And we stormed off to his office. Always made me giggle. Anyway, he was a very, very good editor, and the paper, we used to sell millions more then than they do now. I remember once being in a traffic jam and seeing the taxi driver in front prop the paper up in front of me on the wheel and read my column as I was in the traffic jam behind him. That's a very good feeling to have. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I loved writing for the Sun. I loved writing for newspapers. These days, very few newspapers carry my copy, however, because I am, let's face it, after all, a vile pervert. This has been day 22 of Coronavirus Diaries. See you tomorrow.